Right, hello. So with this one, as I said, we're going to start with a pencil. What I want to do is sort of give us a frame, well, a frame in the loosest possible, maybe structure is a better word, a kind of structure to then work into, because often that throws up some really interesting shapes, and you then, what I want is to create two spirals that kind of intersect with each other, and then where they overlap each other, we're going to make decisions about which one sort of gets priority and how we decide to fit them together and that sort of thing. So I'm going to start off by drawing the two big spirals. So if you're not massively good at drawing spirals, I always think it's easier to start in the middle. So if you put your pencil kind of top, sort of roughly about in the middle of the paper, but sort of a third down from the top or so, and then sort of just come out from that middle point going round, and just, it doesn't really matter if it's in any way perfect, but just as you bring your hand out, just slowly getting bigger as you go round, and then imagine you're drawing a great big snail shell, and then it can disappear off into the sort of the nether regions, into the edge of the paper up there. And then we're going to do a second one, but we want to make sure that some of it is going to sort of bisect this one here. So I'm going to start the middle of that one sort of not too far below, because it's okay if it sort of matches, maybe a little bit further below. And I'm going to go the other way. So instead of going, I suppose I was going anti-clockwise, wasn't I? So I'm going to go clockwise round this one. And I want some of these moments where it overlaps, because that will give us kind of bits of shape to fill in. And then I can take that off into the side, that one there. And then, well, we've got two sort of spirals there. You could of course add a third one in, or some other bits and pieces, but now we've got some areas sort of through here. I think I might add another line in, just so that I've got some nice sort of sections to think about. So I'm going to take another line as like a sweep of an arc coming through the bottom. It really doesn't matter exactly what shape you have, but what we're looking for really are these sort of fragments inside the bigger shape, to see what we can do with them. And then I think, because this is quite a big space and it's not massively interesting, I'm going to take, like, from where these spiral lines here intersect here, I'm going to take another sort of curve round like that, just to sort of break up this bigger space. So I'm going to certainly do that on this side, coming up and round and down like that. So that's just going to give us some thinner spaces to work with there, I think. And I think I've got quite a big area here, maybe in the bottom here. Maybe imagine this is like another giant spiral, and just put another sort of arc through there. And you can go on, you could divide up other ones, you could decide, I think maybe just on this corner here I'm going to put a circle in, and when I say circle, I don't mean like, you could use a something to draw around if you want to make it really perfect, but mine is obviously very much not perfect because I've hand drawn it in and I don't care, so that's fine. So I've got my sort of outlines in, and that's all I'm going to use my pencil for. So I'm going to go into pen now, because this is kind of like, it's a bit like using a grid, but the grid is obviously completely free form, and the shapes that we've got are going to be very different to a sort of square grid. But equally, inside all these are kind of shapes that we can pick out and we can play with them. So I'm going to start off with a fairly thick pen this time, because I'm going to need a 0.8, so I want it to be kind of like quite a strong outline, because in this sort of series of sessions we've been looking at using quite strong outlines and sort of creating the feel of a dark background beyond. So there's not going to be any big areas of black in this, but we're going to use some areas of sort of shading and things. So where I've got this nice sort of middle section here, I'm going to pick that out. So I'm going to start with that line here, and then when I hit this line here, I'm going to come round on that curve, but then I'm going to choose, each time I meet another line, I'm going to sort of change direction with it, as it were. So it's going to give me a kind of a weird shape in the middle to think about. And there we go. So that's sort of, I don't know, I have no idea what you'd call that shape. It doesn't even at the moment remind me of, it's almost a bit like a fish, but it's sort of a shape in the middle there like that. And then I'm going to look at some of these other pieces and kind of say, right, well, there's kind of a nice shape here, like a sort of eye shape. So I'm going to pick that one out and maybe I'm going to ignore the pencil line that's going through the middle of that and just see that sort of shape there. And this is what you can do. You can kind of go through and decide on some areas. Like on this one, I've got, it's quite a big spiral, so I'm going to draw that spiral in pen, and I'm going to treat this as one sort of piece going round, and then that line sort of over the top here as well, just to sort of take that through. And of course you can do any pattern at all to begin with. You can do all sorts of shapes, but what we're doing is slightly, so you can see that now that this one is sort of now looks as overlapping this piece here, and then this sort of like looks like it's disappearing under here, doesn't it? So I could continue it maybe kind of round here, so I can bring that round like that. And then for the ends here, I'm going to take that sort of across there and there, just so I've now got this sort of like a piece of macaroni shape kind of down there. And you know, any shapes that you want to find are going to work fine. This one I'm going to, so in the way that this spiral is kind of now on top, I'm going to take this, make this spiral dominant again. So just take that line through there and then bring my spiral over and bring this line up here. And if it makes it easier for you to sort of think about it, you can go through and rub out the pencil lines that you're going to ignore. So if I just do it in mine, you don't have to at all, but it might just help sort of get the feeling of coming across of what we're doing. So if I take that line out and that line out there, then you can see I've got a sort of spiral on top, and then that little bit, that would come out there as well. So we're sort of getting, so we're sort of seeing some of the structure that we've put in, but we're also changing it a bit. And you don't have to have, like, well, that line needs to come out there. You don't have to have great big spaces. We can make little small spaces as well. So like this line here, that can become just a little shape kind of coming in there. And these are all little sort of pockets or areas of design that we can then work into and put different sort of patterns into. And I've got another big piece sort of coming around here, so I think I'll bring that round to that line. No, I think I should ignore that line, shouldn't I? Because I've got a line in there, so I've got to ignore that line. So I'm going to bring that curve in. Oh, but then it's going to draw that. Well, we'll see. You know, this may be where you want to decide to chuck another shape in just to give you more things to play with. And I can't follow lines as well with my hand going up. I find I have to go down. That's just learnt that one. Right, and then I'm going to come across here with that line in there. Like that. And so this line needs to go away. So I'm going to then just take that one out. Again, do the same thing if it helps, makes sense for you. If you think you can work around it, don't worry about it. So now I've got quite a big sort of shape coming round there, so I'm going to take this line across, and that, oh, let's just take this one right off the page there, so that's coming off there. And right, so then we've got these two spiral lines coming in here. We can't do a lot with those, or we could put another line in to cross them so they start, you know, give us a bit more interest. So let's do that. I think we'll add another line in. This is, you know, you can change things as you go, as things develop. That's always fine. So let's bring that one just to graze past that one and then up again like that, and then that gives us a sort of this eye shape coming in here. And it doesn't matter if it doesn't follow it perfectly because it's not a perfect world. And then I've got a little tiny thin area here. That's going to be quite good fun to do. And then, so I can bring that line down and maybe take this one all the way up and off the page. And then let's take that section round. And I'm going to take it right round to there. And then I've got this circle coming in off the side like that. And then I think these two can disappear. So I can take that out, and then we've got, you know, we can finish off with these ones around here. So we have another of these big eye shapes kind of coming through there, you know, eventually you can always put more lines in and break your space up again, and we may well do that as we go. Or we've got these 2 lines in here. I think we definitely will get rid of that one, because otherwise we're just going to get a weird sort of stripy bit on the side, and I quite like that shape coming out of there. And then maybe take one out. Yeah, take one out as well. I think we'll take one as well. Why not? So there we go. So that's sort of coming in there like that, and then we've finally got one at the top here, so let's put that in. And again, if you haven't got exactly the same configuration, it really doesn't matter, because it's just the kind of idea. But now I've got this sort of abstract kind of base to kind of work into. So I can think about, now we've got some these sort of, if you look at the repeating patterns or the elements that seem to crop up like this, we've got a lot of these sort of ellipse shapes, that sort of eye shapes, like a sort of and that one's almost one, but it's just got a little bit sort of taken. It's almost one here as well. So we could think about doing a similar idea in each one to kind of link together. And then we've got these sort of like almost like interlocking ammonite sort of shells kind of feel. So they could possibly have something different going on in them as well. And I think it'd be quite nice in some of this to reflect this sort of overlapping pattern element of it again in this kind of smaller version. So I'm going to go back to the pencil. If I said we're not going to use it again, that was clearly an arrant lie, because we are. I'm going to do some small spirals first in pencil. But I'm going to choose one of these bigger areas where I've got a nice sweep, and I'm going to fit some spirals in. But I'm doing them in pencil because I'm going to do the same sort of thing again, in that I'm going to overlap them, and then in between in the overlaps I'm going to get some other shapes appearing. So when I start the next one, instead of giving it loads of room so that they're next door to that, I'm going to start relatively close to the one in that I've already done, and let those shapes overlap as they come round. And then you can decide if you want to have them going the same way or going opposite, with your left hand. Apparently most snails are right-hand spirals, but every now and again you get a left-handed spiral, and they can't reproduce until they find another left-handed snail, apparently. And I did see about people who had a left-handed one, and they searched all the zoos in the world, and they finally found their left-hander a left-handed mate. So it was a happy story in the end. They found each other across the oceans. So there we go. So left-handed or right-handed, you can decide which way your snails go. There we go. But we should be getting, again, some little sort of overlapping bits. So you've got some more overlapping shapes appearing inside the spirals. And it's quite fun. It's quite surprising how, we spend so much time often doing these doodle drawings, trying not to sort of keep things apart. It's actually quite hard to make yourself overlap them. So there we've got, I'm going to fit a couple more in here. Just sort of let them crash into each other. That's absolutely fine. Bring them up and round. Like that. So I've got a relatively big one in there. So that's all kind of like fitted in there. And then I can decide to go, and again I can, starting off with my pen, I can outline round this spiral, but then I'm going to stop when I hit that sort of little border that's in that little eye shape there as well, and outline that so that it's standing out separately from the rest. And then I can sort of carry on round, or I can decide to change it, and maybe I could ignore that line, come to that line. It's just go through and just find different moments where these lines intersect, and just whenever you come to a junction you can decide which way you want to go. So like I've hit this junction here, so I could go that way, I could go that way, but I'm going to confound everyone by going that way, just so it's giving you slightly different shapes each time as you go round. Just seeing how the pattern grows, really. Being quite sort of organic about it, not worrying too much where we're going. And you can decide to have a rule. You can say I'm always going to turn right, or I'm always going to create eye shapes, or you can decide not to, because that's the beauty of this. You're in charge. It's your little kingdom. So And you'll sort of see, you can sort of half see the spirals. They're kind of, you can still see them, and they're all sort of there, and then also they're not there at the same time. They're sort of overlapping and underlapping. Can you say underlapping? I suppose you can. Overlapping, underlapping. And I'm resisting the temptation very poorly to add at this point wombling free. There is a fantastic, I think it's Camden Town train station, but it has a connection. It's a newish station in London, and it has a connection for the underground and the overground. And somebody in there, I swear this has to be deliberate, they put two signs, so one says underground and one says overground, underground and overground. And if anyone knows 70s TV shows and remembers the Wombles, I swear that was deliberate, because their song used to go underground, overground, wombling free. So I like to think that whoever designed that signage had a sense of humour. So I'm going to come round and just pick out these shapes. Again, just deciding. So I get little triangles, I get little eye shapes. Some of the spirals may remain quite intact. Some of them are going to be sort of almost disappearing into the ones before. So let's bring those round. So that now becomes like a strange little cut-off shape there. And I can bring this one down, and an eye shape is formed in that one. There we go. And bring that spiral round to there. And you can just decide, as I said, for each one where you want to go with them. So that and this one has got quite a, I don't know if I want to join that line up, so I'm just going to take that line over there. And then again, if you finish that and you want to make, and you find it helpful, you can use an eraser to take out some of the pencil lines as well, so they disappear out, and then it gives you a different space again. So that one looks like a big Chelsea bun, for example. So let's go and take all those odd little lines that we haven't chosen, and then we can sort of see more clearly the shapes that we've created. So this is quite, because they're building up a lovely structure here. We've got a nice, and you'll find because you've got a structure in there, even if you're sort of ignoring it and then not ignoring it and putting it in and changing it, that it still has a nice rhythm to it. You find that it's got a nice balancing sort of rhythm. So I like these sort of snails coming around here. I think we need to maybe get some more coming in a different part of it too. So the obvious thing would be to put them in here, but I'm wondering if maybe we could put some up here as well. So let's do that. Let's put some, and we've got I've got a piece of masking tape that I'm just going to slightly move over, otherwise they're going to have a weird bit where you take the masking tape off and a bit of the pattern disappears. So I'm going to fit some snail spiral shells in the same kind of way, just fitting them in to this space. And if you get an odd space that's like a squarish space, you can always do a more square spiral, so you can let it follow the shape of what you've got, and again it will give you a kind of different feeling to where you were before. So we can just take some of these round, and then let's put another spiral kind of in round there. And again, once you've got them sort of drawn in pencil, you can go round and decide which areas you want to keep and which you're going to ignore. So like this one at the beginning, I've got quite a lot of spiral, but then I'm going to hit that wall and make a decision to change direction and take out into the next one, and things like that, sort of going round. And it's just nice to have kind of, what we want is a sort of bubbles of in-betweenness maybe. Sometimes we could let's try leave doing all the lines in, seeing those overlap spaces on these ones. Let's just do that and see what that looks like on this. That's quite a nice experiment too. So this gives you smaller kind of areas again to work with, but you can sort of see an overriding pattern kind of coming through. There we go, just get that one in, and just got that last spiral to go around the edge. Okay, right, now you could go in and break more pieces up, but again it has quite this nice fractal kind of feel, doesn't it, with things sort of breaking, fitting up together. So now we can think about maybe some of the individual parts of this, and what I'm going to do is again, we'll do. I'll choose a section I think sort of around here and do like quite a full pattern treatment of it with some shading in it, and then obviously hopefully then you can go away and kind of spread the same sort of thing across the whole sort of surface. So I'm going to take this spiral in here as a starting point, and then try and get some of these little ones in so that you've got a cross section of ideas to go into here. So we've got this sort of spiral here, so we could just do a spiral pattern that kind of came round it, but it'd also be quite nice, we can sort of like add on to this a bit. So I'm going to turn this spiral centre into a kind of circle, or a sort of central nugget kind of area, and then I can add in maybe a few little wings on the side which can help us with the shading sort of later. And then I've got a shape that's coming round here, so I'm going to bring my pen and curl that round, so I've got a kind of like a long, one of my long sort of teardrop shapes kind of coming in there. And I'm just going to grab my tea for a second and have a quick slurp. Right, okay, and so I've got this sort of shape coming round through here, and that was the sound of my glasses falling off my nose, which is unusual. What are we doing? Slipped off there. I thought someone cut my ear off. Right, so I'm going to do this shape coming around here, and then I've got another sort of round end. Let's bring another round end to sort of meet that, and I've got little triangles kind of coming in here. So then let's take this shape round and soften that one, so it's like a sort of round lozengey kind of shape going on in there. Right, so then I think this eye spiral in here, or this sort of central bit here, I'm going to put a really tightly packed spiral in. So I'm going to start in the middle and just bring that spiral going round. There we go. So that's just given that a nice sort of tight shape. I'm going to pop down to a slightly smaller pen, so like my 0.5 or 0.6. Well, for the 0.6 doesn't get. I was thinking the day, which pen don't I use very much, and I realised that it's the poor 0.6 really, because I don't often pick it up for some reason. So I think they're the ones that always last longest in my pen kit, because they get an easy life. So I immediately can't find one, of course, to prove my point, but what have I got here? For 0.2 it's a bit thin, let's get something slightly thicker. 0.3, unless I can find a 0.5 in the next 2 seconds. 0.4, there we go, you have won. So I'm going to just put a very simple sort of like section lines coming in, but again I'm going to give them the curve that we do, so they start to make us think about the form as well as pattern. So I'm going to give them an upward bend as they come round, so they start to create segments, and those segments have a bit of shape to them. Doesn't matter if they're perfect at all. In fact, I think if you put a little bit of a wiggle in them, and then the next one try and copy that wiggle, it kind of does have that seashell kind of feel to it. So there we go, and I can just put an extra wiggle as I come round, and then still sort of thinking it as a curve, so I'm still kind of overall giving it a curved shape, but I'm just throwing a little wiggle in as well, and that helps to give that a different kind of feel as it goes round. And if you lose the wiggle and it goes smooth again as it goes into the tighter zone, that's fine. So I think as you come down into the smaller end and your little lines are going to get tighter together, I think we can sort of lose the wiggle and just keep the little bend right down to the tiny end like that. So you've got a sort of, that's got a very sort of snaily kind of quality, and it's just starting to curl in round there. Right, then I'll go for a second tea slurp quickly. As some of you will know, tonight was begun with a disaster of me forgetting a soup I've been cooking all day, and it's destroyed. So the air of my studio now smells very much of burnt soup, which is not ideal for it's making my throat rather dry. Right, I'm going to leave this one because I'm going to do like a shading technique on this to make it look like a sort of smooth, you know, in contrast to that sort of snail kind of shell effect in here. We've got these end bits in here, so I'm going to put, again, my favourite of putting circles in increasing and decreasing sizes into some of those spaces in there, and just fill those in just so they're sort of in part of that. And I think in this end bit here too, so where we've got that little triangle that's appeared between those two shapes, and then we can put the circles in. And then this is where you want to do a little bit of dark shading as well. Now it's not going to be as dark as some of the ones we've been doing, but I'm just going to again just draw it in so you can see where I am. This one I'm using is a brush pen again. This is the sort of fine liner brush pen that has a firmer brush tip than the sort of refillable one, which is much more flexible. So sometimes this is better for depending on what you're doing. It's just a bit harder, and so it's a bit more controllable. So that's what I mean. We're just going to see, once you fill that end in, you get that nice, you can see that round shape that you've created and the sort of bubbles that are appearing in this sort of pattern kind of coming round. And my aim for this really is to have areas of texture like the snail sort of shell here and the spirals, and then areas of smooth shading, so you've got a nice contrast between the two. So it's a bit of one, bit of the other. So I can just fill that shape in there relatively quickly, and maybe some of the edges of this where I've got that spiral, I made kind of wings to sort of like tidy up that middle bit and make it slightly rounder. And so I'm just going to disappear those off into the shadows of the dark background. But that's all I need to do for now. There'll probably be some more bits, but that's just starting to hopefully make that pop out and look really quite nice and dramatic. So we're going to do colours on this one, aren't we? So we've got another sort of area here. So maybe with this one we can do some sort of larger segment kind of shapes. So thinking of almost like bananas, or not bananas I suppose, but like sort of ovals. But I don't want to get too regular like petals, so I'm just sort of stretching them into the shape, maybe sort of half wrapping them around a little bit around each other. But you know, I don't know, just sort of like doing some long shapes that kind of fit together a bit. Like, again, sort of layers or pods, segments. I'm thinking a little bit of when you break open an orange, you know, and you've got those segments. And if you break open an orange segment, you can see the kind of cells holding all the orange juice in. And sometimes you get some really lovely patterns inside them. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. I don't want them to be too much like petals. I said more like pods or segments, however you want to draw them. You can give them quite a curl if you want, and sometimes they can come away from the one before, so give them that sort of extra shape. So I'm still being quite organic with these ones. I'm not being too rhythmy. And then eventually I could go back and sort of shade in between some of these to sort of, again, make these little dark triangles appear, but we'll maybe do that a bit later if we get a chance. And then we're going to come into our sort of spiral zones, and, you know, we could fit like spirals into some of these spaces. Like if we just do a spiral, and then as it hits the walls, kind of imagine it pinging, ping, ping off the walls, like sort of ricocheting off and round, just to sort of fill in that sort of space there. And then we can start another one coming round again too. So, and then you sort of imagine it sort of carrying on between, or it's sort of squishing in between, and that's quite a nice quick way to fill a space in with a sort of background design like that. Then we've got these sort of spirals here, so they're getting a bit smaller, aren't they? So we could do some circles, maybe just fit them in around and getting into different sizes. We could do some of the nice feather spirals that we've done before in some of the other ones. And I think these ones, the smaller ones, are going to get a bit more intricate, so we're going to have smaller designs coming in and around there. So you can use patterns from other designs that you like or that you think are going to work in that space. So we've got sort of teardrops coming round, and around they go. And then we can, if you get bored of doing them, you can turn them into half moon lines again, and then you could even turn those into the sort of segments as well. They can grow and change as they come around, because it's all about the sort of patterns merging and sort of blending each other. And then we're coming into this space here, so what's going to fill this space here? Oh, I think again we can then take it into different sort of lines, just simple, you know, like sort of repeated lines, rainbow hoops I often think of them, but just spreading out into that space. And we'll make them stand out more with shading and colouring, but that just gives us somewhere to go. And they've got this little sort of eye shape in the middle, so I think probably a couple of circles and we'll come in and put a bit of shading around that. So I'm going to put a little bit of shading in just so we can see those circles stand out, and then I'm going to get some colours and I'll do some colour shading on this larger section here, so we've seen how that can look. Okay, so just want to make this little eye shape really dark so that it stands out. Sorry, I just need to grab some tea, so let me just mute for 1 second while I'm doing that bit of shading. There we go, tea on board, good, good. So yeah, so this just, again, makes that stand out quite nice, and it kind of starts to link. Can you see how it's sort of drawing a link between all these little triangular areas with these sort of dots in? So every time you do one, they're going to kind of form a nice connection between these sort of areas, and that again is what helps to kind of give your pattern an overall feeling or a rhythm, just by, because these little areas, although they seem quite small, they're actually quite important. They act as little links to kind of bring all the areas together. So on these kind of, I'm thinking colour-wise, I think we should go, you know, I think we should be quite rainbow. I think we should really go for it in sort of, so I'm going to go the whole spectrum of rainbow colours, but I'm going to also be, I'm not going to do them totally bright. I'm going to be quite subtle with them, but I think plenty of colours. So, you know, whatever colours you feel like doing. This one, let's going to start with, I'm going to use violet, that's a colour, isn't it? And then green, and then I think in the middle section maybe we want to have a yellow so that we can add a highlight with yellow. So let me get a yellow pencil. I've got a very pale yellow, but I'm worried you're not going to see too much of it, but we'll see how we go. And I've got a pale bluey green as well. So I want to give this sort of like a real, I want to make this look really sort of smooth and slippery, like it's a sort of gemstone. So obviously bearing in mind I'm going a little bit fast with this, what I'm doing first is using some lilac to put in a kind of lick of shadow around the bottom, and luckily with this sort of colouring you can leave a fair bit of the centre of the shape quite pale. It helps to add to the sort of the contrast, which gives the sort of surface I'm after. So it'll develop quite quickly. So I'm just putting in some, looks like a sort of strip of purple, lilac-y purple shadow, but I don't want to, I want it to blend quite smoothly. So quite soon I'm going to really lessen it. So to get this effect, you sort of push down for the darker bit, and then you ease up, and you've got far less pressure going through your hand onto the pencil, and you can just sort of blend that area of lilac in. And hopefully what you're seeing is quite a nice, soft, graduated colour. I don't want it to be too strong. I don't want it to be too like a sort of a band around the bottom. I want it to be quite well blended. And then a similar kind of feel, I can then come in with the green, and as if it's sort of like got a sort of changing colour almost. So same sort of thing round the top. Can you see I just left a little tiny edge of white around that, and sometimes that's really effective to look like a little bit of reflected colour. So I'm just colouring my first dark green, look, and I'm just leaving a little hem, or I suppose I don't know what you'd say, a little line of white. That's probably a perfectly adequate description. And again, start off by doing it with a fairly high pressure pencil, so getting plenty of colour on, and then release the pressure a bit, sort of work your pencil to blend that green so that it becomes a soft green kind of coming in. You can see it's got a really nice effect of sort of blending these two colours together. It sort of makes it like a lovely opalescent kind of stone. So that's my sort of green, and then maybe where these two meet a little bit I can just sort of go slightly bluer as it blends into that just to sort of blend it into that purple and lilac-y colour kind of up there, so I get a nice sort of rainbow crossover. And then up here where I've got the green is going to go into my yellow. So this may not come across brilliantly on the camera, but you should, I will put a scan or a photo at the end of the session so you can see, you get a crisper image that way. But plenty of yellow on, and then blend it into your green so that it's forming like a sort of transition between the two really nicely. So it gives you a big yellow highlight and blend it into the green. And then, I don't know, we could put maybe where that lilac is here, let's, you know, use a little bit of blue on top of that and just get a hint of blue coming in there as well. And you can see it just starts to make this sort of lovely opal kind of glossy effect, you know. So I'm going to have this contrast between these sort of rainbow areas and then the sort of more structured kind of areas. So I can get it, and I can just sort of blend those colours in together. I am getting a bit of texture from my board coming through on this, which is a reminder that, you know, you might want to put a smoother surface under for getting a really smooth effect. And then, of course, once I got those sort of basically mapped out, I can go in and I can add some depth and darkness to the very edges so that we definitely get that falling away into shadow, because that helps to model that and make it look sort of three-dimensional. So I can just put a bit of extra purple power into the bottom half, and again maybe a little bit of extra into the green. If you can't get it dark enough, or you've gone full pressure on it and it doesn't still look dark enough, then think about overlaying it. So again, you can get a darker green tone or a darker blue tone and just go back in and add a little bit of extra to that edge. It doesn't matter if you see this more as a kind of line, it becomes like a really strong line of shadow kind of through there. And that's a nice way of just, again, a tiny bit of extra drama, and it just helps to sort of add the contrast. So that sort of, I don't need to put a lot more in, because it's funny how your eye kind of sees this then as all being coloured, even though there's quite a lot of white in it, but it has a really nice kind of slick feel. You might want to go back later and add a little bit extra in, but we'll see, we'll keep going. So then we've got our sort of snail shell sort of lines coming through here. So I want to create like a slightly sort of again sort of opalescent kind of feel. So in previous ones we've done ones where we've kind of left like a light scent, haven't we? So we've done all our colouring, but we've left a sort of consistent white section in the middle. This is kind of similar kind of idea. It's bringing in elements of the rainbow doodle that we've done and some other bits and pieces like that. So what I'm going to do with this one is for the I need a slightly darker blue. I'm going to do a slightly darker blue. That's better. Right, so for like all the way round this shape at this one edge here, as it were, I'm going to do a little bit of blue. So if that doesn't make sense, if you watch what I'm drawing, hopefully that will make sense. So I'm doing a start off on the sort of inside curl of this shape in a little blue section inside each white section. So where it gets really small, you can kind of cheat and whiz over the lines, because nobody will kind of notice at that distance. It's fine. It's all right. Sometimes it's fine to colour outside the line. So I'm just coming in sort of with this blue. But what I'm going to do is I've done quite a few blue, then every now and again I'm going to chuck in a little hint of pink. Just sort of like, well, I've got a purpley pink. That's what I'm after, really. Just one little pink sort of flash of pink in there, and then back to the blue, and bringing that sort of round and down, and then maybe on one of these blues go a little bit of a darker blue just to kind of, or purpley, just to kind of overlay maybe a couple of them. So it's sort of got a rhythm but sort of doesn't at the same time. And then I can come back with some more blue. I'm juggling so many pencils here now. This is when I need sort of pencils with Velcro on them, so I can just stick them to the side here, but they don't think that maybe I've just invented something amazing. My gosh. So there we go. So just to take a few more, and then I'm going to put another little pink hint in again, just sort of a little pink moment, and then coming round with a blue again. But sort of mostly coolish colours. That's it. And then I can do a little tiny bit of purple. Maybe a couple more sort of purpley ones, and then come back with the blue. And if you think it's too sort of spotty, you can kind of overlay it again. And then we're going to kind of go round on the far side and do sort of the same thing. And then we're going to put some flashes of other colours into the middle section, and that will kind of have a highlighty feel. So again, coming around this side, try not to have the same colour. Well, I mean, you can have some colour, but where you've got your flash of pink, like move that round a bit. So at least move that round sort of one. Probably be sensible to do all the pink bits first, wouldn't it, really? That would probably make sense. So just bring a little tiny hint. I've just done exactly what I said not to do. Well, it doesn't matter. We'll live with it. It's fine. And then we're going to put some kind of blue in just on that side as well. And the blue, because it's a cool colour, it always has a slightly more kind of shadowy feel. And we can go back over the top with some darker blue in a minute to give it a bit more texture. You can see how leaving that white middle bit kind of does act a bit like a highlight. So we're going to sort of add on to that and play with that with a bit of colour. But I think I want another pink flash as it comes down towards the tail. And then same up in here. I'm going to put some purple in as well. So I can come back with the purple and just just add a little bit of extra into the bottom of some of these blues, and that will start to add like a bit of shadow and cool colours. And then a couple of the blues you can take all the way across. So maybe one or two of them, just sort of almost join them all the way up with blue. Maybe one, maybe two, like that. And then you can go and we can grab some really bright contrasty colours. So maybe a little hint of orange just on a couple of them, just to add a sort of flash of different highlight kind of coming through just in the middle section, and then a bit of yellow. And it's just a way of getting like a real rainbow kind of feel, but it almost has that feeling a little bit of sort of iridescent. I'm trying to think of it as iridescent seashells and that kind of thing. That's a very bright yellow, but maybe a bit more pink. There we go. So we've just got the warmer colours kind of in the middle of the shell shape, and then more cooler colours on the outside, and that still starts to help it look like a highlight more than just a sort of colouring in, because the cool colours act as shading at the sides, and then those hotter colours, they start to look like a sort of iridescent highlight wiggling across the top. So it's quite a nice effect, that. And you can leave some bits of white in the middle, so again it adds to the feeling of it being three-dimensional. And then again you can go round and darken up the bottom edge. Again, I'm overlaying with a bit of green, and that will help to give that sort of shadowy feel. So there we go. So that's just sort of, and you can come on this side as well. It just helps to give it a 3D quality. Just working that in a bit more, and it's sort of hopefully got a nice sort of rainbow kind of feel, but again quite sort of sparkly. Then we've got this sort of area here, isn't it, with our sort of I kept thinking mine is bananas, but they weren't particularly banana shaped really. So this one, I think loads of colour on here. Let's do a lovely colourful kind of effect. What I'm going to do is some of them are going to go from sort of quite blues into more yellows. So I'm going to get them to translate from orange to blue, kind of going round. So this end is going to be more orangey. So these ones are definitely going to be orange, and they might even have a bit of red in them. But if we just start off with the bottom edge being definitely orange. So I'm picking like the bottom half of each one. And each time as I go around, I'm doing slightly less orange. So it's going, and you can also adjust, if you're going down too fast, you can always come back and add a bit. Let's make this one a bit more orange, and then that one can be a bit higher, and so on and so on, sort of round. And then as the orange is going to come down, it's going to have less orange. It's going to start to fade away. So at the last bit, there's hardly any orange in that last one there. And then I think towards we get to this end, I'm going to bring, so then I'm going to bring some yellow in. So the top half that I've left white, I'm going to come back and colour those in yellow. So the yellow is going to sort of almost take over. I'm going to hope that will come through all right. But then on this one here where I'm getting the yellow in, I'm going to start introducing the next colour into the top of that yellow. So I'm going to choose a kind of blue, because that will blend into a green. So that yellow there, look, it's just starting to have a little hint of the green colour. And then this one is going to be all yellow. You can do all of this top half yellow. There's that song, isn't it? It was all yellow. Can't think who it was by now. And then we can blend in the blue, and then it's going to come a little bit further down. And there's no more orange on this one, so it's just going to be yellow. And then the blue is going to come down, or the greeny, so it's actually blue, but it is blue because it's making a green. And what's quite good about that is when it overlaps the yellow, it's going to go green. But of course, when it starts up, it's blue. So it's a really easy way of introducing the next kind of colour, kind of round. There we go. So that's sort of blue there. And then there's going to be sort of half and half yellow on this one. And it's quite nice to do quite a long overlap because it will sort of help it to blend in really smoothly. I would obviously be taking... you can take a lot more time over this. I'm being quite quick to try and get all this rainbow colour in. But you want to try and get a really nice soft blend. So up this end, lots of pressure to get the colour in, and then really release the pressure and just let it glide over the surface just to slowly build it in. Sometimes people say, I think it depends. Sometimes you're doing like a sort of back and forward motion with the pencil. Sometimes it's almost like doing lots of little round and round sort of circles. They give slightly different effects, but they just work equally well to kind of get a blend in. So now the blue's kind of really taking over here, and so the yellow's going to come just in that sort of corner or bottom of that petal there, and then all of this is going to be blue and plenty of pressure. And I'm probably going to go into purple next. So I might start introducing a tiny bit of purple in the top of this one. We'll see. I'm just going to get that blend going down over those that little bit of yellow at the end there. And then I think I'll bring purple into the next one. So again, I can now bring the blue. I should have put some yellow in first, but I can get that bit of blue in first, and then yellow can come in just in that bottom like that there, and then I can continue the yellow down into that, sorry, continue the blue so it's coming down over the yellow. And then up here at this end I can find a purpley colour. I've got a pinkish purple, which when I blend it with the blue should still look quite cool, but it could also work sort of eventually. If you kept this going, you could work it back round into a red colour because it's got a hint of red in it too. So last moment of yellow on that bit there, just on the tip, and then my blue is going to come in and cover all of this one pretty much almost to the end. And just that little hint of yellow at the tip. And then this last one, I can do completely blue because it's going to start, the purple's going to start creeping down from the top. I haven't put any purple into this one yet, but as I've got my blue pencil, I can guarantee all of these are going to basically be blue overlaid with purple, I think. So I can come back and colour those all in blue while I've got my blue pencil in hand. There we go. And then I can come with my purple, and I'm going to bring that purple a little bit further down into the blue each time. Here we go. And that's then introducing the next colour. And it's quite nice, look, because it's the purple colour, it's kind of reflecting into the shape above where we've got a bit of purple too. That's very satisfying, and it would be so lovely if I'd carefully planned that as opposed to just accidentally doing it. But you know, it looks like I've carefully planned it, and that's all that matters. So that last one is going to be nearly all purple. So we've got a nice kind of, again, a nice sort of rainbow kind of feel. I might want to come and add a little bit more of this, because we can still think about the shading, using this as shading in these sort of shapes. And then maybe this up this end, which is perhaps looking a little plain now, so you've got really to grips with that one. If I can grab me a red pencil from my massive pencil box, here we are. We could introduce a little bit of red into the sort of tips of this one here. So a redder, stronger, fierier colour coming into here. Just to sort of add a bit of difference, disappearing away a little bit, but then also maybe being a little bit of shadow under those shapes, just where we can bring it in. There we go. So I think that's got a nice kind of feel. And then I think, again, this trick of getting it to kind of come into the background and be part of the background, I can then get my black pen and the white spaces that I've got in between that, I can go in and eat them up, and it just helps to make these shapes kind of blend into the black lines, and it gives them a sort of cohesiveness. It makes them all part of this piece kind of coming around. So you don't have to do this now. If you're drawing along, you can come back to it when you've got a bit more time and a steady hand, but I'm just want to get this in to kind of show you the effect that we get. And again, it has a lovely effect of really making these bright rainbow colours stand out a lot more than having them against a white background. It helps those colours pop, and it just also helps to kind of use the shapes that we drew originally, because we drew them to add a bit of form as well as being pattern areas. They've also helped to make this look curly, and I think just putting this little triangle of black in helps to sort of draw attention again to that shape and that decision, and making those look kind of all part of this sort of pattern. So I can just do, I'm going to do the whole of this sliver in between. As I say, you might want to come and do this at a later date, you know, when you've got a bit more time, because I'm being very quick, and it's worth taking your time to get this quite neat, because it really helps. I say it helps to make these colours sing, and it helps to kind of bring all these shapes together, and it kind of gives that nice sort of background feel. So it works really well, I think, to do that, to take some time to do that. And then as a final kind of tip, if you really want to sort of increase that sort of 3D feeling, I think maybe even with something like I don't know if it all, every time I go for a black pencil, they're always the ones that are most hiding, but I think you could sort of darken down some of these tips again so they disappear a bit into the black background that we've put in. I think maybe you can do it with pen, if you get a very fine one, and this is a really, really fine one, but you can add some shading on top. This one's so fine it's not really showing up very, it's struggling over the pencil a bit, but just adding a little bit of dark shadow into some of these points again has them sort of disappearing into, I think I need a slightly big one, and this one is 0.03, which really is tiny. You can add some stippling like that to sort of bring some shadow in, or come in with your finer pens and just get a little bit of extra shadow into those points. It just helps making it look like that disappearing away. So we've got a nice, I think we need to get we've got a nice sort of lozenge shape in here. We've got some different sort of snail shell, and hopefully we're still sort of seeing this kind of overall snail shell kind of feel. Some of these patterns we can do again, we can do them quite on a bigger scale in some of these sort of areas. You've got these sort of teardrop petals here, they might go into, you know, you could have this sort of same sort of idea but kind of running across this spiral. We've got these sort of shapes up here. I think we could do some, let's try doing some circular kind of, well, sort of circular kind of shapes, maybe just sort of tumbling into this space here, maybe some double ones and then sort of overlapping again, just a few kind of building up and round, just kind of giving it almost like a sort of bubbly feel, you know, as if they're kind of all pressing in together. Keep them quite sort of organic and let them just fill up the space as we go. And some of them can go on top and kind of overlap again, just to kind of fill all these sort of shape in. Then they can sort of squish into the shapes around them, so they get quite distorted by the edges of the patterns as they fit in. So they're kind of like squashing and squishing into that shape that you've got there. Just fit them in. Sometimes they can overlap if they want to, and just sort of so that we're just filling all of that space up. So it's got this nice sort of organic kind of feel. Just looks like nice bubbles, really. I found some amazing marbles the other day in a gift shop that really looked like bubbles. They had that fantastic iridescent quality, and I don't know if my son wanted them, but I bought them and pretended he did want them, and now I've got them. That's how it's one of the perks of parenthood, is that you can buy stuff that you want and pretend it's for them. Right, so I'm just packing all these sort of shapes in here, just again give this a bit of texture. Some of them we can overlap, some of them kind of go behind, and then you can squeeze them into those sort of triangles so they sort of fill up the spaces, and it just gives that sort of a nice kind of organic texture. And then again, to colour this, well, I'll show you in a minute, we're going to use quite minimal colour, but even small amounts of colour can be quite effective if you're kind of following the shapes that we've got drawn in. So don't worry if they overlap on this one, because we're using this kind of theme of things overlapping and intertwining. So I think it's fine in this case just to have them, some of them overlapping, some of them are sort of not, and then we can bring them into some of these big shapes. And we can squish them in, and some of them can even become like little spirals, just to get those last few in. So all of that space has got this nice sort of bubbly texture in it now. And then, as I said, colouring wise, where you've got, because you've got sort of double lines here, you've got some quite thin spaces and sort of thin fine lines, you can come in and put quite a strong or a reasonable pressure in to get just a sort of edge of colour in, but then you don't have to worry too much about the insides of the circles. You can just sort of get some of these edges in, and then maybe, you know, you can then go into a green. That was I picked up a blue that looked green. Here we go. We can go into a greenish tone into some of them, and as they sort of overlap and they meet each other, you can change colours, and it just, you don't have to do, like, again, loads and loads of colouring, but just adding in these little hints and whispers, and maybe some of the circles inside the space, just sort of around the edge in green, and some of them again coming round, just little hints and bits and whispers of colour, so it's quite subtle. But still there, you know, maybe some of those small shapes, again the little eye shapes, they can become darker, and we can concentrate on some of those more, but keep it quite sort of light, so you've got quite a light section sort of coming through there. I'm using blue and green, but sometimes it's quite nice to add in some hints of yellow, because, you know, if you mix blue and yellow you get green, so it works quite well to kind of maybe just choose a little bit of yellow in this as well. And you can even then put some of the yellow into the centres as well. But that sort of, again, that's another sort of one to do. So it's quite sort of subtle sort of colours. So let's have a look. How are we doing for time? Right, okay, so where we've got these sort of ones that are overlapping, again, we want to kind of get some nice colours going here. Let's choose this one here. This is quite a good one. So we can do some, again, some quite nice sort of subtle, a bit like this sort of colouring, but where you've got this purple coming, it's sort of up here, we can kind of reflect it into the one below. So if I grab the same kind of lilac-y purple pencil, then that can, oh, have we? Anyone else see me? I think it's just for you. I think everyone else is okay at the moment. So I'll just sort of carry on. So again, so like the lilac-y colour coming in round there. So it's kind of like reflecting. And again, I've left that little bit of white just sort of showing around the edge, and that works quite well to almost act like a little bit of highlight. So just bring that sort of soft colour coming in sort of round there. And then very light in the middle, and then I can just make it a little bit darker again as it comes towards that crease. So I haven't got a sort of line to follow, but I'm just using my pencil shading to almost put a bit of a stripe in, and then as it comes down towards the crease of the spiral, it gets a bit darker again. And then because I've got purple there, so I can take it into a blue, so I can do the same sort of thing. I can bring the blue edge darker and coming round, and then paler in the middle. But then I'm going to have a nice bit here where the two colours are going to kind of merge, and hopefully with time get a nice subtle blend going into one to the other. And you can leave a bit of white in the middle, and that again still helps to give us a kind of highlight effect. And then you can decide where to go next. Where should we go next after blue? Green, I think maybe. Let's go into green. So again, just got my blue coming round, and then changing to a green pencil. I can, again, shadow near the black line, go heavier. And when you get like this, obviously when you're doing these sort of shells, you're going to have a lot of green on one side, and almost like a wedge shape as you come in, because you're going into a smaller spiral. So keep it quite light in the middle if you can, and then darker at the edges, and it sort of helps to carry that highlight, but we're still being quite soft and gently blending with it, so it's not too harsh. We don't want it to be too stripy. We want to keep that sort of nice opaly feel. And I think we'll take green all the way down into the centre, and as you get down towards the centre, of course, the green's going to get darker and heavier. So think about that, and then bring it out lighter from that sort of blend, just to sort of bring that centre of the shell in darker. And then we've got to think about going the other way. So we're going to come up to this one. So this one, I think we've got purple, so we can go towards red quite easily with the purple. So we start sort of overlapping, and then come round. Again, leaving the centre till last, really, so that you're keeping that paler area of colour. It's easier to kind of get the darker bit in to begin with, to kind of give you an idea of where you're going, and then you can quite gently work your pencil back just to leave a very sort of, it's not really white, but just a much paler section over the middle. If you leave a little bit of white, that will make it look shiny, and that's never a bad thing. And then bring this continuing round, and this can continue round into orange. But so I'm giving myself stripes, but they're very subtle, and by using quite gentle shading and smoothing, they're going to be, you hopefully almost, if you get really good at it, you almost kind of like want to make it almost so that you can't quite see where the colour changes. You see when it's definitely changed, but almost the moment where it changes, that becomes very sort of obscure. That's what you want, is sort of when you know you've got a really good blend going. And then I'm going to go into pink from this red. So as it comes round, I've got a slightly stronger pink There's a slightly stronger pink there. No, that's a brown, that's a pink. There we go. What's this? It's quite a day glow pink, this one. So I can bring that round. And sometimes I find that if you go from red into pink and then orange, that can be more subtle than going straight from red into orange, because the sort of pinkiness is almost like a forerunner of orange. So again, they've got quite a lovely light feel using the colour this way. We're not using it really heavily, but it does have a lovely kind of... Again, I just keep thinking of all those mother of pearl shells that you see with the sort of big nautilus shells, you know, from the far away oceans, where they have these wonderful mother of pearl interiors. That's what I'm thinking of really with these. So they sort of got that nice sort of blend kind of coming through. And then where you're coming into this one, we've got to think, well, so how are we going to relate to this one? So I think on this side, I would think going into the green again, I think, because then that's going to contrast, because you've got the sort of orangey pink coming up here and you've got the purple there. So you don't have to completely ignore what's gone before, but you don't want to have the same colour on next to each other when it's the next door shape, because I think otherwise they'll disappear too much into each other. So obviously you've got the green happening here, and again, if you get your dark edges in first and then lighten up your pencil stroke, so we get a nice subtle middle section with a kind of shaded kind of feel. I wonder if do I need to turn the light up a tiny bit, as we're getting definitely gone towards night time outside. Blending that sort of through there. And then going this way, we don't want to go into anything too pinky because it's going to be next to a pink section. So I think we're going to go more into the blues again on this side. So again, a little bit of laying the blue down first. And I think come along that edge so that you've got a blue outline, and then sort of almost like leaving a bubble of white in the middle around that shape, just with a bit of a blue centre. So see, we're not colouring the whole of the shaping, we're allowing the white to kind of show through in parts, just to add that gleamy kind of feel. Opalescent is definitely the word of this evening. So I can just leave that bit of white in there. And then what you can do though, although I've said sort of, I don't want to, if you just bring a little bit of hint of the pink that we've got here, if we just bring a hint of that into that white section, it kind of looks a bit like it's reflecting from that section there, like it's reflecting across, and that kind of adds to the reflective kind of feel of those two pieces being related. And as we come around this side, we don't really want to go into purple again, because it's sort of next door to the purple, isn't it? So I think we can probably take it into yellow from that green. So again, put the yellow in, but again I'm going to put a little bit of, like, as if that purple's reflecting on that side there, so a little sort of flash of purple down that side, like it's a little bubble of reflected colour, and then around it it's going to be more yellowy and yellowy greeny. So there we go. I think hopefully that sort of will look like, you've got to think about the way when you put like Christmas decorations next to each other, you get kind of these distorted reflections of different colours sort of moving together, and you can see one reflected in the other, and that's kind of what we want to get, that kind of feeling. And I'm going to bring the green along that edge just to add a bit of shadow as well. So there is yellow there, but there's also then green. And again, that sort of edge round there. So this is how we get these nice sort of soft, like bubbly colours. And then we've got the contrast of some of this more kind of line work happening. So maybe kind of in these areas here in between, we can do much more graphic little tiny spirals that come round, and keep these in black and white. So we've got a bit of a contrast. I think it's a bit like, you know, when you make a good cake, you want to have the contrast of textures, you know, it's why it's nice having nuts and crunchy bits on a big smooth cake as well. So we've got different, and you can just fit into little tiny spaces, you can just build a little tiny tight spiral inside them, and they act as a bit like shading, but they're not quite as dark as the very dark bits. So you've got a lovely combination then of these very soft, bubbly kind of colours, and then you've got black and white elements too to kind of stand out against them. So that just sort of, again, I think it's a really nice contrast having those two surfaces together. And we could decide to put maybe in some of these spirals some of these smaller bits, I'm not sure. I think with this one I'll probably do a rainbow kind of going all the way through it somehow. I think that would be quite good. I've got a nice spiral here, so again with this spiral I want to, it's sitting next to green and blue really, so again this has got to be a red spiral in some way, but I can put a little bit of, again look, if I start off by giving that piece of reflective green in that surface, and then I can come round and maybe even look, because there's blue here, isn't it, where that blue touches, so I can put a little hint of blue in there, and if I make my colour curl along with the shape of that sort of it's almost like a comma kind of shape there, and then the rest of it is going to be the pinker tone, so I can come in, leave some white in the middle and come round that, and it sort of hopefully will look like, again, like it's picking up on the colour from its next door neighbour, just to sort of bring that round. And we might need to get some lines of a slightly darker tone in that to add as a bit of shading, so for that I'll probably choose maybe a little bit of red just to come in, and where the black line is, go along there with some darker colour to be a sort of shaded effect. So there we go, that's just going to help bring some of these details across. And that's leaving that bit quite whitish because it will just sort of, again, it'll add to the kind of lightness of it. Right, so how are we doing? Oh, right, okay, so we've got about 10 more minutes. So in this sort of section here where you've got this sort of large eye shape, I think I want to keep that quite dark in there. I'd be quite tempted to do some big circle shapes to fill in there, because I want to connect that visually to some of these smaller sort of areas. So I can put big circles in. So I want to bring the black in, but again, I don't want to have too much black in it. So once I've got those circles in, and I can then even go in between there to add more smaller ones kind of going in there, and then these large ones can become spirals to pick up on the kind of lots of spirals idea. So they can spiral up. I think I find it easier to go from the outside to the middle to the outside. I don't mind if they're wobbly. In fact, you can make them a sort of squarish, I think, because I want something to contrast with all the sort of rainbow swirliness. So we're kind of using two different sort of ideas close together, so you can bring that spiral in like that round there. And then I'm going to come with my black pen and just try and get that in so that you can see the kind of effect I'm going for. And these circles that we leave, I'm debating at the moment whether to come in and colour them and leave them, you know, like little coloured pearls, or whether to leave them white. I haven't yet to reach a conclusion on that one. I'm still thinking about it, but I can see merits in both. I think they'd look quite sweet being done as like little sort of coloured pearls, but on the other hand, it's quite nice to keep this contrast between these more graphic black and monochrome sections and the coloured sections. I think that's what we're trying to achieve really, is to have that contrast, so that some pieces are very three-dimensional and have that very sort of curvaceous surface, and some of them are much more flat and two-dimensional looking, just so we're playing with different perspectives throughout the piece, I think. And obviously your task to continue on will be to continue on and fill the whole page up, or as much of it as you feel able in the week. But see, that just brings then, we've got quite a lot of monochrome in here, so I think we'll definitely get a coloured sort of effect into this spiral here. I think we'll start with blue in the centre. and I want to get I'll go for quite a dark blue, but I'm going to still leave like a little point of light in the middle of each one of these shapes, so I'm just leaving a little white circle, and I can come back and make it more subtle. And then where I want the transition, because I've got quite a dark blue there, I'm going to put my pale blue down, but then I'm going to go back with my darker blue and come round the edge just to shade it, so that there is a transition happening, but we sort of get it going quite subtly. So that can all be blue, and then this one is going to again be mostly blue, but just add a little bit of the darker colour in as a shadow towards the point of that shape. And then this one is definitely blue, and I'm leaving a little bit of white where I've got the round sort of teardrop shape on the fat end of the teardrop. I'm going to leave a little white flash, and that's going to act like a little highlight on it. And the rounder bit, the sort of fatter bit, is probably going to have more highlight in it because it's kind of sticking out and it can catch more light than the thin taily bit that's kind of tucked in to the one behind. So I'm just adding, still going to add a little bit of the dark blue into their tails as they come round. And then again, nice fat, if you sort of draw, almost like draw like a white, like a ring, so that you're leaving that white nice and bright in contrast. And then another one, and then this is going to transfer into green again, just like we did, well, not exactly the same, but similar to the way that we did some of the other ones. So where I've got that blue there, I'm now going to get my green and just start putting a little bit on the tail. Again, just a subtle bit of green to begin with, but as we go around, the green's going to gradually take over. So this is, if you're the sort of person that has to, if when they get a tin of, if they see someone's like pack of pencils or colour pencils or felt tips and they're not in the correct colour spectrum order, if that sort of annoys you, then this is a really good pattern for you, because this is all about organising things in their sort of nice sequenced colours, and it's very satisfying if you have that kind of mindset. I'm not going to comment on to whether I have spent hours tidying other people's pencils, but they have to be in the right order. You can't just, if they're going to be in a tin, and they're all lovely and laid out, you have to put them in the right order. I think it's very important. So there we go. So we're going to come round and just leaving that. And then where we're going to go from the green, I think we'll probably go into yellow. So to get that to transition, because the yellow is the lighter colour, I'm going to put most of this shape in green, and then come in with my yellow, which is, here it is. So that the sort of where the white is, up that end, you get more yellow coming in first. So it's kind of the green's going to sort of retreat backwards. And you can't really retreat forwards. Why did I say retreat backwards? And then we're going to get a bit of yellow in. And then I can colour all of that yellow and then go green over the top. And then my green will become a more yellowy green. So it starts to transition nicely over. And then we're going to keep going round in that sort of spiral. But I think we're going to have to continue these spirals and so forth as we're getting really towards the end of our session now. But I hope that you've enjoyed this idea of the sort of these very sort of soft bubbly colours next to these nice monochrome patterns, and you can take it across the whole page. And I think hopefully you'll see that by having the structure in first, it allows us to then play with that structure and break it out, but also keeps that rhythm and structure going through the whole piece. So there we go.